All right, here we go. Guys, so start a new chapter real quick. Like always, we are on module, well, heck, 8 now, chapter 8. But I'll show you where to find everything again. I'll show you where to find everything again. And look at this, emojis, huh? Look at the helmet. Not bad. Not bad. Thanks, Brody. Appreciate it, dude. All right, so you'll find everything here at the start of the module. So here's the title page. We're at World War II. I know a lot of you are already saying, "Oh, we're talking about World War." Yeah, we've been talking about this interwar period, the build up to it, right, and how these causes are leading up to this conflict. So objectives. Here's the purpose. Textbook chapters, the presentations for the chapter, and then other resources. So here is a good source, which we'll actually use that today. I'm going to put an assignment out for you. Oh, it's going to be due Wednesday. All right. It's not going to be due tomorrow. It's going to be due Wednesday. It's about the fall of France. So now France is, oh boy, going to get taken over. So we'll mention about that here today. Anyway, here's your bell ringer for today. So we talked about really the start of this, right? Last chapter, we finished off just mentioning about how World War II's kicking off. Anyway, what event started World War II? In your response, explain the military tactic used by Germany that makes this war different from World War One. So again, World War One, we already talked about trench warfare. Now war is going to look totally different as things got even more industrialized, more modernized, leading up to World War II. So we'll review that, see how this is a good transition point to this chapter. All right, so last chapter again was all about that interwar period, seeing how we get to World War II. So what was going on between the wars? All right, real quick, World War One. What was the type of warfare again? What was the style of fighting like? Awesome.
Trench warfare.
Yeah, trench warfare, good. And this was very stagnant, right? A stalemate. And that's why this war really drug on for a long period of time, about 4 years, right? And there wasn't a lot of movement. Okay. Anyway, with World War II, it's going to look totally different. And the reason for it is there's new tactics and a lot more innovations on the battlefield, right? From that little bit of a span. So, real quick, as we're leading up closer and closer to World War II, the rise of dictators and how these countries are mobilizing, they're industrializing, right? They're militarizing again. And let's face it, what else were they doing? Imperializing other lands? Yeah. A lot of these causes from World War One just are the same in World War II. And like I mentioned, many historians just view this as one long conflict. It's just that there's a break in between the two wars, which there's a lot of truth to it if you think about it, because all the causes are very similar. A lot of the issues and concerns for each country are about the same, right? It's not like it just got over it. They just, you know what, until we get the generational men coming back into our military ranks, and yeah, we'll get back after this conflict. So yeah, there is a lot of truth to that. All right, real quick. So as these borders are all being redrawn, which I know this map up here is from World War One, but it's a further there's none one I have, but I'll reference it today. But a lot of the borders are looking a lot different here in World War II. And you guys saw that with the map assignment and with the test. So real quick, before we get into the war itself, which we're going to talk more about it today, a lot of the movements here early on by Germany. What event started World War II? What event? So what kicked this war off? Brody. What's that? Yeah, the invasion of Poland, right? That's what started this thing. Okay. And when did it happen? When did the invasion of Poland happen? Jason? Yes, the fall of 1939. So September. Okay. And before Hitler just invaded Poland, which he thought this land was rightfully Germany's, right? Who did he make an agreement with? The secret pact, negotiation. Go ahead, Brody. The U.S. Yeah, the Soviet Union. So, yeah, it wasn't just Germany invading, it was also the Soviet Union. But, man, this really triggered a lot of these events. And we talked about Hitler's foreign policy. What was his policy of expansion? Getting this land back for the German people. What was that policy called? And these are the steps to warfare and how the Allied powers were appeasing them, saying, you know what, right, we got to kick this can down the road a little bit. We don't want to see a war. And yeah, obviously that's exactly what happened. War would break out. But what was this called? Go ahead, Lane. Yeah, Lebensraum, the job, which means living space, breathing room for the German people. So as he was expanding, the borders were increasing here for Germany, and Hitler was just trashing the Treaty of Versailles. Well, enough's enough, right? Finally, Allied powers allied with Poland. And once Hitler invaded, this war starts. All right, what was the tactic again used by Germany? I think we talked about this, right? Pretty sure we did. Naomi? Blitzkrieg, good job. And what is Blitzkrieg? What is Blitzkrieg, Jason? Yeah, lightning warfare, good job. So it's very fast, it's a fast pace, and you're using all the facets of the military together, right? So we're going to mention a few of these terms here today. That just nail that down a little bit more. But these fast-paced attacks is what Germany's going to use to make sure that World War I trench warfare doesn't happen. Right now, with these new tactics and industrialization and mobilization, well, these efforts are just too much and overwhelmed Poland. But we'll mention even the West. I know it's going to take huge chunks of land very quick with this tactic of Blitzkrieg. All right, so. Anyway, with Blitzkrieg, what does it start off with first? What's the first means of attack that Germany uses? What comes in first boosts up some of these defenses? What was it? No? Go ahead, Bailey. Yeah, the aircraft, right? And we'll talk today the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. Then here come the tanks, right? So these Panzer divisions come rolling in. And what was equipped inside of these tanks to make these attacks very efficient? All right, go ahead, Chase. Radios? Yeah, good job. This is the first time we actually see a portable radio in these tanks, in these armored vehicles. And this is making sure that this is a calculated attack, fast-paced attack, and make sure that your enemy, well, it's caught off guard. And then finally you have your infantry, right? So all of this is moving, it's breaking stuff very, very quick. And it's really tough for the enemy to, focus defend itself. All right, one thing here too about the invasion of Poland I thought was interesting is that Poland actually had cavalry units going up against tanks. So you can imagine how ugly that was, right? I mean, yeah. But anyway, Poland did a pretty darn good job of defending itself. Took about a month, but it is what it is when you're getting invaded from Germany from one side and the Soviet Union from the other. So, yeah, it's just a matter of time. It was inevitable. All right, here are your terms for today. And again, this is starting off chapter 8, World War II. So here we go. Again, some of these terms might be a little bit of a review. You might already have them. But just to make sure we got it, we got the Axis powers, the Allied powers, the Luftwaffe, Blitzkrieg. Again, these terms, some of them you might already got. All right, so I'm hoping to get to Operation Dynamo today, but if not, I can save it for tomorrow. So if you need me to, I can pull up the terms again, which I can do that. So just make sure you guys get up to Fall of France. And then tomorrow, if we don't get to it today, I'll talk more about Operation Dynamo. All right. So there you go. I'll give you guys some time. We'll move on. All right, so the Axis powers, what countries belong to the Axis powers again? So we review this at the end of the Bible chapter. Naomi, go ahead. Yes, good job. And where do all three of these countries fall on the political spectrum?
Fascists.
Fascists, yeah, good job. Far right. Good. And then with the Allied powers, all we got so far is what, two countries? So again, we'll add to this. So think about that, guys. We'll add to this. Anyway, Jason, go ahead. Yes, good job. All it is at the start of this conflict is Great Britain and France. And just hitting at and looking ahead, which I said about your assignment for later, France is going to fall. So it's going to be Great Britain by themselves here soon. And we'll mention about how this is going to change and how other countries are going to get added in the mix. All right, the Luftwaffe. Luftwaffe is James.
The air branch in Germany.
Yeah, the German Air Force. Good job. So this is German Air Force. And again, they were really ahead of the time when it came to Blitzkrieg attacks, right? They were very fast paced, moving pretty good. And when it comes to the types of planes, I know I mentioned about these Stuka dive bombers, which I'll play you guys a video to start a class tomorrow, or if we have time today. And these sirens that were equipped on the bottom of them, to kind of give the German troops a heads up where these attacks were going to happen. And it's just frighten the heck out of your enemy. So whenever you heard that screeching, those horrible, horrible screech, you have to look out. Anyway, Blitzkrieg, we mentioned that already. It's lightning warfare. Okay, now you're using Luftwaffe, right? The armored divisions, and then the infantry all at once to make a fast-paced movement. All right, again, trench warfare, you're not going to really see it too much here. And this is what's going to make this war a lot different than what we saw in World War One. So these fast-paced attacks, again, are changing the battlefield and military tactics. It was actually a British design, believe it or not. So it was actually Germany's, it was a British design, and then the Germans, because, well, let's face it, there was no war here in between the wars. They thought, well, we'll just unveil it. We might as well utilize it here now that we got these new mechanisms, these new machines of death, really. All right, fall of France in 1940, says it in the name. France gets invaded. They lose pretty early on, right? It doesn't take too long for Germany to invade into France, which actually happens right around the same area. You guys remember the Schlieffen Plan? Where did Germany invade? France. Well, they tried to. They got to do it a little bit, but what countries did they invade through? Naomi?
Belgium.
Yeah, Belgium. Good job. Anyway, for Germany, they're not going to go through that. You guys remember the line that France had in between France and Germany? What was that defended line called? Do you remember? Bunkers and it's heavily defended. The Maginot Line, you guys remember? Okay, all right. So anyway, for Germany, they're going to invade right through the Ardennes Forest, which is where Belgium's at. And no one really expected this attack to happen through this heavily thick forest, right? But the Germans moved very, very quick. And yeah, there's reasons why, and there's a lot of new stories coming out with different types of drugs that they were on. It was kind of wild to imagine, but very true. And that's how they could move very quick through the wooded area of the Ardennes forest. All right, Operation Dynamo. If we get to it, great. If not, is what it is. But in northern France, there's a beachhead called Dunkirk, right? And this is where the Germans were moving so fast because of Blitzkrieg attacks that they trapped over 330,000 British troops on the beach of Dunkirk. So if they would have captured all of them, or let's say took them out, let's face it, on a beach, is there any coverage? Can you hide anywhere if the Luftwaffe, let's say, is dropping bombs on you? No, you can't. And this is one of these stories here where Britain, Winston Churchill, who we'll talk more about tomorrow, ordered the people to use their own life vessels of Great Britain to sail across the English Channel through the dangers of the Luftwaffe and pick up these 330,000 troops and bring them home safely. Anyway, it was a success, but, well, Churchill even stated that, I mean, are you going to win wars on retreating? No, you're not, right? So it was a success, but at the same time, they're retreating. So it's one of those things where, again, the people of Great Britain aren't going to give up. They're going to continue to fight, even up against the biggest of odds, like the Nazis here. And this operation was successful in retrieving and evacuating this many troops. So if they would have took them all out, the war probably would have been over like that in the Western Front. Great Britain would have had to surrender 300,000 troops. I mean, that's huge. So anyway, we'll mention why Hitler decided to call off the dogs, and maybe that's one of his biggest blunders here early on in the conflict. All right. So let's get to it. So Blitzkrieg, we already mentioned about it. Lightning warfare. Again, using all the assets here of the military in order to try to really overwhelm your enemy. I attached a few videos to the video lesson today, guys. If you want to do a little bit more research on Blitzkrieg, there's a nice video that explains it in detail. There's also, at the end of the video lesson, you can find on Dunkirk, but also the movie trailer. Anybody see the movie Dunkirk? Eli, you have? Yeah. Very suspenseful, right? I mean, you gotta imagine, there you are, just kind of waiting for your death on this beach while you're hoping someone comes and saves you. And luckily for Great Britain, that's exactly what happened. The people joined it. All right, you guys don't have to write all this down. We already mentioned about it. Okay, we already talked about how this war breaks out. The invasion of Poland, September 1939. You want to say fall of 1939. This is how the war starts. Okay. That's where Hitler and the Nazis made that weird agreement with Stalin and the Soviet Union, split up Poland. And again, Great Britain, well, with this pact, Hitler thought Great Britain was bluffing, but they weren't. And as they declared war, Hitler really took that gamble, realized that, and he's got to move quick. He's got to punch him in the mouth fast. All right, again, taking sides. We finished off last chapter with this, showing the Axis powers, again, fascist regimes. Far right on the political spectrum. And then you got the Allied powers at the start of the war. And this is it. You got Great Britain and France. We'll mention France is going to fall pretty darn quick. All right, Hitler continues to move. So where does he go first? So after he takes Poland, he looks north, right? He looks north. And as you guys remember from that, right? As you look north here, Denmark, right here, this small area here in northern Europe. Well, that's his first target. And yeah, what tactic does he use here to take over Denmark? Go ahead. Blitzkrieg, yeah. Then he looks up here into Norway, okay? And the whole idea is to try to gain resources, gain materials, right? Here in Norway and moving up in the Scandinavian countries, there's a lot of resources of iron, oil, right? And well, he can kind of carry on this strategic locking of the North Sea. Right? Let's face it, who still controls the high seas at this time? Who still has the strongest navy? Naomi? Yeah, Great Britain, right? Well, now, if Hitler captures Denmark and Norway, gets all those resources, which they've been mining the heck out of it here, which we'll talk about early on in the war. Well, now look, England is in striking distance, not just from, let's say, northern France, which we'll talk about, but pretty much in many other areas, right? From Denmark up here to Norway. So is it kind of easy to lay strikes then? Yeah, it is. So in other words, he's kind of looking already at a way to maneuver around the Western powers by not actually striking them first yet. Okay, so as he takes Denmark and Norway, yeah, resources, materials, that's huge for him, right? It's huge for the Nazis. But at the same time, strategically trying to lay an attack on Great Britain from all different angles, right? Again, Great Britain, their greatest defense is that they are an island, right? They're surrounded by water. They got to find an advantage somewhere, and that's how he's doing it. So he takes they call the northern countries. Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple, pretty easy with blitzkrieg attacks. All right, next. Well, I looked into the Low Countries, as you can see here, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg. Yeah, they don't stand a chance. So with Hitler and the Nazis, as they invade France, they're not going to go through this heavily defended area known as the Maginot Line. Right? Again, we talked about that kind of in World War I, with how France is heavily defending it with bunkers and different types of artillery, really just waiting for an attack from Germany. Right? Germany, like in World War I, can attack through these low countries. Right here where Belgium and the Netherlands, Luxembourg is. Right? And as they do that, they go through an area known as the Ardennes Forest. So France, I mean, obviously, they're not thinking of an attack from Germany through this heavily forested area. Right? How are you going to move armored divisions? How are you going to move troops and, obviously these tanks through this heavily thick area? You can't. Well, the Nazis, they made a quick work of that. And this is where those sources come out about them utilizing methamphetamine here to their advantage and moving through the wooded areas very quick and over different types of rivers, like the Rhine River, and how they did it so fast. They don't really understand how they did it. And it's more research, like I said, that's coming out on this drug, the secret drug that they utilize called Pervitin. You guys want to do more research on it, go ahead. But in other words, France wasn't expecting it. They didn't think that they'd go through this wooded area, especially that fast. And well, for the Germans, they caught them off guard. So as they invade into the Ardennes forest, right, it only took about, well, a little over a month for Hitler to take over France. And we'll talk about that here soon. So as he moves deep into northern France using Blitzkrieg attacks, the French just weren't prepared, especially up here in the northern part of Europe, right? It almost looks exactly like the Schlieffen Plan. Remember that from World War One? Yeah, it almost looks exactly like that attack. But now you have the advancements of the military, the Luftwaffe, or the armored divisions that you didn't really see in World War One. Anyway, as the Germans are moving deep into northern France, well, they get to this area known as Dunkirk, which is the beaches here in northern France, right? It was Hitler's goal, his objective, to get there quick enough in order to stop the British from sending troops down into northern France. Well, he gets there, and the troops are all stranded on the beachhead, right? Again, France just could not defend with these fast-paced attacks, right, of Blitzkrieg. So once the Nazis pretty much surround the beachhead, well, just by dumb luck and maybe just a chance of God, right? Hitler decided to call off the dogs. So as the troops, the British troops, are stranded on this beach of Dunkirk, right, which is right here, guys, northern France, right here. Okay, as they move very, very quick, right? They surround these troops and they're sitting ducks, right? Pretty much the movie of Dunkirk talks about the suspense and mentions about how these troops are just waiting for their death, right? The Luftwaffe, the Air Force, right? The German Air Force, they're waiting to just constantly bombard the beach and take out all these troops because there's nowhere to hide. And for some reason, again, Hitler decided not to. He thought that his troops moved very, very far in a short space of time. So he thought, let's just give them a break. So again, the invasion of Poland happened, and then moving up here to northern countries, right? Where Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and then moving over here to Western Europe. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, you can imagine the troops are pretty tired. But here's your chance. Here's your chance. And he let us look away. So as he has these troops surrounded, Winston Churchill, who we'll talk about more tomorrow, he's the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. Remember Chamberlain? Yeah, okay. Now it's Churchill. And there's three, I'll mention why, the shift, the change in Prime Minister. But Churchill decided, well, there's only one way out of this. Okay, we got to go and try to save our troops. Well, the Luftwaffe is out there, right? They're even, some of them, these pilots, are dropping some of these bombs when they're told not to. And, well, he asked the private citizens to say, hey, take your life vessels, whatever ship you have, even if it's a fishing ship, take it across the English Channel and try to save some of our troops from their imminent death, right? If we don't get these 300,000 troops over across the English Channel and back home, this war is going to be over for us pretty darn quick. We're going to have to surrender. We don't have any army to fight up against the Nazis, or maybe land a strike, attack and strike. So yeah, with Operation Dynamo, this is the mission for citizens. Right? Use your own vessels to go across the English Channel to save these troops, which they do save over 330,000 troops. Again, a huge success, but here's a good quote: we're not going to win on evacuation. We're not going to win by retreating. Anyway, there's Churchill here. I'm sure you guys maybe heard or saw a picture of it before. All right, I'm going to put out the assignment, The Fall of France, and there's a lot to it. I know I mentioned about it at the end of World War One. Hitler's going to have France surrendered. Well, the same place that Germany surrendered at the end of World War One. You guys remember the Columbian wagon? Yeah, well, Hitler's going to take it out of a museum, put it in the exact same spot, and make this huge propaganda piece out of it. He's going to now have France surrender to Germany, the same location. So, yeah, he's going to pour salt in the wound, right? Now he's taking advantage of the situation, which we'll talk about. So just a real quick look. Here's some pictures of Hitler, the Nazis, walking into Paris, taking pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower. And yeah, they're sending that back home for everybody to get rallied over. Oh, here's Hitler and the Nazis too, at the tomb of Napoleon, believe it or not. You guys remember Napoleon? Yeah, the great French conqueror, the emperor. Well, he thought it was something of a spectacle to see this one conqueror and now another one. And he wanted to make sure he could go visit the place where Napoleon obviously is his resting place. So we'll talk more too about the Blitz and how Germany's going to look to maybe take over Great Britain. Not going to happen, but yes, it's all right. All right, see you.
please, as long as